I mentioned in a previous video that I felt like Sergeant Michael Lenk was essentially an extension of the Albert family. That if he wasn't an Albert brother, he sure as hell acted like one. And now we're going to get into that. Now, the first favor he did for the Albert clan was when Tim was involved in his hit and run. And if you remember the story, there was somebody stopped at a stoplight. Tim slammed into them, really destroyed his vehicle, but then panicked and ran home. So it was Officer Lenk who was the first one on the scene. He was forced to do a little bit of an investigation when he saw that there was fluid leaking from the car that took it all the way to the Albert house. But when he got there, he didn't bother to do any field sobriety test, didn't do a breathalyzer, he didn't ask for blood, nothing. Just basically, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. All right. Did not treat it like it could be a possible DUI at all. And gave him it was like a misdemeanor reckless driving charge, and poof, Tim gets off the hook. So that's score one for Lenk helping the Alberts. The one he did for Chris was a really big deal because this ended up being a lawsuit and the city of Canton actually had to pay, but it's the story of the Lapalato brothers. And there's a lot of detail, so I'm just going to try and go quickly. Chris Albert was at a bar one night. He gets in a fight, and this was all the way back in like 2002. He and Julie are at a bar. He gets in a fight with Mark Lapalato. Now, the police are called because even though the bar staff breaks it up, Mark Lapalato refuses to leave the bar. So they call the police. He gets thrown out, and this all happens like 9 o'clock at night. Lenk shows up at the bar. He's there drinking. He wasn't there until later, like 10:30 or 11. The bar closes at 12:30. In that period of time, they said Lenk had about 4 or 5 beers. He goes to leave, and he's outside getting in his truck when Chris Albert and Julie, she was, I think, still his fiance at the time, but they walk up a little bit nervous, and Chris is like, hey, listen, I got into a brawl with Lapalato earlier, and here he comes, and he's got friends. So Lapalato left and went and got his brothers or whoever, and they're back, and they're ready to rumble. So Chris goes to Lenk and is essentially like, need your help, dude. So Lenk taps in. He's off duty, and he's been drinking, and he decides he's going to get in the middle of this. So everything I'm about to tell you, all of this came from an affidavit for the lawsuit, okay? They filed a lawsuit with the city of Canton, and the Lapalatos were paid. So I tend to believe that the things in this lawsuit were proven true. So apparently Lenk walks up, he kind of deputizes himself. He's like, hey, I'm an officer. We're not fighting here. And they're like, we don't give a fuck what you are. We want a piece of Chris Albert. And so Lenk takes it upon himself to fight Chris's battle. And he apparently sucker punches Mark Lapalato, gets him on the ground. They're wrestling around, and he bites Mark Lapalato on the arm. So the guy has a wound, and he's got bruising on his arm. The police are called, and 2 other officers, Lane and Nix, show up, and they actually have to pull Lenk off of Lapalato and separate him, break up the fight. And they tell Mark Lapalato, get the fuck out of here, go home, leave. So, but his brother Alfredo is still there. So Nix puts handcuffs on Alfredo, and he makes Alfredo go sit in his police cruiser. Well, that's when Lenk goes over to Alfredo and is talking shit to Alfredo, and he says, I'm going to make your life miserable. And I'm not kidding. He spits in the guy's face. So that tells you what kind of animal that Michael Lenk is. But anyway, so it doesn't end there. After about 45 minutes, they take the handcuffs off of Alfredo, and they send him home. The next day, he goes into Canton PD. Now, this is Sunday. He goes into Canton PD, and they said, sorry, the sergeant's not here. You're going to have to come back on Monday. So on Monday, it's Mark that goes back into the Canton PD, and he's like, look, here's my bite mark. Look at my bruises. Your officer beat me up. I want to file a report. He's told they'll look into it, and they'll let him know. Then on Tuesday, Alfredo calls the police station again, and they say, oh, we're looking into it. We'll let you know. The Lapalatos never hear anything from the Canton PD because, of course, they wouldn't. But you know what happens? Instead, both of those gentlemen are issued a summons to appear in the Stoughton District Court on charges of assaulting a police officer. So even though they went and reported that they were the ones attacked, they're the ones that are going to get hauled into court because they were the ones that supposedly attacked Lenk. Fast forward to February 6th. It's 6 months later, and those charges from the bar are still pending. So now, according, again, this is still in the affidavit by the Lapalato's attorney, that Mark and Alfredo are inside of a mobile gas station. And out in the car is their brother Chris and a couple other people. They go inside the gas station, and in walks Officer Lenk. And Officer Lenk immediately kind of walks up to Mark, and he's like, how's it going? And Lapalato goes, not good, man. You beat the shit out of me, and now I'm the one that's got to go to court. So they leave and they go outside. And I don't know if they're like loitering in the parking lot or what they're doing, but Lenk comes out and he says to Mark, get over in my cruiser. So he orders Mark Lapalato into his cruiser. And when they get into the cruiser, according to Lapalato, that Lank said to him, can we talk about this, dude? Like, can we work through this? Because what's probably happened is Lank knows that this whole thing's going to go to court and it's going to come out that this is a whole big bundle of fucking lies and that he was the guy in the wrong. Lapalato stays absolutely silent in the car. So Lank orders another officer to arrest him, and he's arrested for on the charges of threatening, disorderly conduct, and intimidation. They haul him off. And Mark Lapalato is held until 3 a.m., and then he's arraigned in the morning on those charges. So Lank's just looking for things to pile onto the Lapalato brothers. But on October 23rd, after a 3-day jury trial, Mark and Alfredo are found not guilty on all charges, from the bar fight to the Mobile gas station, everything. They're found not guilty on all charges. And it says in the affidavit that since that incident, that both brothers have been pulled over repeatedly for motor vehicle violations by the Canton PD. It's no surprise that they ended up leaving town due to years of harassment after the fact, but the Lapalatos did get paid. And it named in the lawsuit was Lank, Chris Albert, 2 other officers. So Canton PD had to pay out. And by the way, when your officer spits in somebody's face, I'd take his fucking badge the very next day, but they didn't. They let him stay, and he got a slap on the hand even though he cost the city money. Which brings us to January 29th. It's clear that Sergeant Lank is not done doing favors for the Alberts. So he receives a call at home at 6:08 a.m., which tells you he wasn't even on duty when they found John O'Keefe on the lawn. But Officer Lank is the one who gets called. He and Good show up at the house, and what happens is he ends up going into the house at first with Good because, of course, he's a friendly and Brian Albert will let him in. So he goes in and he does a group interview. So nice police work, dickhead. You don't ever do group interviews, but he puts them all together. He writes some statements. He leaves the scene. And then guess what? They call him back because suddenly Jen McCabe remembers some other bits of the story. In fact, I think she remembers now that Karen said she did it. So Lank comes back. Again, Lank is the only one that's allowed to take statements from them. Good stands by the front door. When Lank comes back, he's got Gallagher with him. Same thing. Gallagher, nobody walks around the house. Nobody asks to have a look around. Nobody ropes off the place because they know that Lank wouldn't do that. That's why he's called. I happen to be drinking out of a red Solo cup in honor of Sergeant Lank because, yes, he is the dumb MFer that decided to take blood samples in red Solo cups. So it doesn't, 3 days on the job and I would know better than that. He not only scoops up blood samples from the front yard where John O'Keefe's body was in red Solo cups, but then he fails to seal them in any way, shape, or form. He puts them in a paper shopping bag and then just kind of folds over the top, acting as if there's no germs or air or anything that can get into them. I had mentioned in my video that I made about Brian Albert that he and his wife were really adamant that Lank got some reports wrong. And I would just ask you, it seems weird to me that Lank would write the same statement. Like he would go out of his way to write down in a report because he recorded very little. But it seems strange to me that he would write down something like both Brian and Nicole claimed that their daughter left at this time. And he wrote it on 2 separate reports and he put the same time. They both said, nope, he must have gotten it wrong. Now, I don't believe that any other witness would be willing to get on the stand and push back and say, he doesn't know what he's doing. He must have lied. He fucked it up on the stand, unless it's Brian Albert who knows that he's got Lank in his pocket. And he can say anything he wants to, and he can throw Lank under the bus. And Lank is a lonely little puppy dog who will keep coming back and doing favors for the Alberts. This guy should have been thrown off the force 10 years ago. I don't know why he wasn't.